I've been drawn to the paranormal since an early age. There was a small cemetery in rural Illinois that I go to at night to take pictures from grade school through early college. It was fairly old. There were graves from the 1800s as well as people from today. There wasn't a lot of houses around either, just farms spread out across cornfields. Over the years, I collected a few pictures of orbs and some mists, a few of which are here. I've had quite a few experiences as the result of these visits. The one that makes me feel the least comfortable goes like this. It was a quiet night at the cemetery taking pictures with my father and younger brother, the early days of my excursions out there in the dead of night. No strangeness or anything out of the ordinary occurred while we were there, just a cool night out in the country under a billion stars. When we got home, we put my dad's SD card in the computer and discovered that he had gotten quite a good picture of a ghostly mist over a grave. I don't have the picture, but it looked like you could have been holding a lit cigarette under the lens. You get the idea. Not long afterwards, our dog started barking out the window next to the computer. He barked consistently for about 20 minutes. It wasn't odd for him to bark outside, it was the timing. So we went outside and looked around, but there were no squirrels or any other creatures of the night, so I went to bed and passed out. I opened my eyes to see my red digital clock was at 3 a.m. on the dot. I sleep with no lights, so my room was pitch black, and over the stillness of the night I heard this faint sliding sound. It was very smooth, like softwood on carpet. My eyes were open, but my mind was mostly asleep, so I didn't really process the sound and went back to sleep. I woke up in the morning for school and looked at my desk in the corner of the room. The wooden chair had been pulled out from my desk and turned to face my bed, perfectly. My desk was right next to the door in my room, and if the chair wasn't pushed in, then I wouldn't be able to get out, so I always kept it in when I wasn't using it. The implication of that still gives me chills every time I think about it. That experience changed the way I approached the paranormal. Since then, when I'm leaving a place after poking around, I'm always very polite but firm in saying out loud that potential spirits are not welcome to follow me home, and it's pretty much worked for me ever since. I ended up having a few more strange things happen in my room over the course of about a year. There'd be the occasional but very obvious feeling of a presence, day and night, and one night I was wide awake in bed when it felt like someone sat on the end of it. I made a bargain with this spirit not long after that. If it must stay, then it can have my room for half the day while I was gone, but must leave me alone while I'm home. I was never bothered again. I'm from a small town, and when we were younger, we'd go out on back roads and drink. One night we had parked on the side of the road by a small cemetery and walked over to the bridge nearby. The bridge was only about 100 feet or so, as it only spanned a small creek. The road dipped down to cross the bridge and then went back up on the other side. This was a few miles from a state highway, and a train track followed the highway. Since a car turning on the road toward us had to hop the tracks, we could see the headlights flash and knew in a while we'd have to get off the bridge. This only happened about once an hour or so. We had been out there for a while, and we had already moved for one car. We saw another car jump the tracks and made a note that we'd have to move in a few minutes. There was a road that turned to some houses, and sometimes we'd walk off the bridge to only see the lights turn away, and this time we decided, let's wait and see. Plenty of time to get out of the way. You could hear the car as it approached. We went back to talking. I think someone was in the middle of a story or joke of something. Then someone said, "Hey, did that car turn?" We all looked toward the highway, realizing at once we never heard it, and more than enough time had passed. We say no lights. This made no sense, and in our synchronized group confusion, we all did a 180. As soon as we focused on the other side of the bridge, we saw the red taillights of a car climbing the road upward from the bridge. We heard the car as soon as we saw it. After a moment of shock, we tried to talk it out. We all knew there was no road or anything between us and where we saw the taillights, but we asked each other anyway. We even looked closely when we left and made sure. Nothing but a tiny back road going over a bridge and then ditches. The next house or road was miles from the bridge. Doesn't make sense. We never figured out what happened. It's like we lost a few minutes of time. The small cemetery was rumored to be creepy. Me and my girlfriend one night were in it looking out at the tree line and saw red glowing eyes. Now sure, you shine a light in the woods and the eyes reflect it, the animal freezes. But there was no light shining in the woods, no bright moon, nothing. And those eyes sat there for a long time. We talked to each other about what we saw and never figured that out either. During the day we went down to the trees and looked in the area thinking maybe it was a reflector shining mirrored or something like that, even though there was no light for it to reflect, but there was nothing but woods. A girl I'd been seeing suggested that, for our third date, we take a bottle of wine, a laptop, and a scary movie to the most remote graveyard we could possibly find. As horror movie aficionados, we both felt jaded and immune to fear, so putting ourselves into the ideal situation for terror sounded like an exciting adventure. The proposed night came, and she drove us an hour out into deep backcountry, heading for a graveyard that we had found in ancient public record, but which was not on any map. When we finally found its supposed location, we ended up having to park 3 miles away behind some large undergrowth. There had been no other place to turn off along the forested country road. The night air was cool, though, so the walk wasn't bad. We walked down a kind of raised ridge of dirt towards the unmarked graveyard, trying not to slip off into the pools of sludge and undergrowth on either side. The trees ringed an open double hill that led up into darkness, and the century-old gravestones sat about in silence. We set up our laptop on a blanket, unafraid, and started the movie. The atmosphere was powerfully creepy, but I still felt nothing until the unexpected happened. Less than 10 minutes into the movie, we saw a pickup truck go by on the country road outside the graveyard. We could see its lights through the trees as it passed, the only vehicle we'd seen that night. We shrugged, thinking nothing of it, until it came back the other way. Its headlights were distinctive. It was definitely the same truck. When it approached the dirt ridge to the graveyard, moving very slowly, I closed the laptop, and we froze as its headlights fell on us for a moment. The truck backed up, apparently turning around, and then proceeded to park right outside the entrance. We couldn't be sure if they had seen us, and we certainly had no idea what they were doing. I suggested we pack up, and my date agreed. We had just gathered all of our things when the truck went dark. We stood there in the pitch black for a few moments, confused. Who was in the truck? Had they seen us? Were they coming this way? There was no other way out of this graveyard. The hill was surrounded by what amounted to impassable swamp. I started imagining how we might escape through it, regardless, but I realized that the attempt would make far too much noise. We'd never make it. We had no choice. Carrying our stuff, I grabbed her free hand with mine. We crept forward along the dirt ridge, wincing at every dried leaf that our shoes crumpled. I could see the truck's dark outline parked in our path, but I heard nothing. There was nothing else to do but creep past the truck, which we did slowly, one silent and carefully placed step at a time. I kept trying to discern shapes inside the truck, but saw nothing but darkness. I looked around constantly, but heard and saw nothing. Still, in the pitch black night, I could hardly see the girl I was with, let alone somebody creeping about or following us. We made it past the truck, but the lack of any incident only increased our fear. Where were the truck's occupants? What were they doing? They had to be out here somewhere, meaning we were out here in the middles of the night and nowhere, playing a potentially deadly game of hide and seek. My heart pounded even harder as I led her down the road to her car. Where the hell were they? We were maybe half a mile down the road when we heard a scream in the woods and a distant gunshot. In that moment, we both immediately realized what was happening. The truck's occupants hadn't been here for us at all, but they would never let us leave if they knew we were here. We both started running in total panic and actually made it another mile or two before we saw the truck's distinctive headlights coming up on us. I grabbed her, jumped off of the road, and dove into the undergrowth and sludge between the trees. We peered through the bushes, waist deep in mud, and watched the truck go by. To our horror, the truck began to slow. I dropped the blanket. They'd seen it on the side of the road. The truck stopped there, only a few feet away, for what seemed like an hour. At any moment, I expected its occupants to get out and come for us. Instead, finally, amazingly, it pulled away and sped on down the road. I tried to see its license plate, but couldn't see anything through the glare of its lights. While I was convinced it was gone, we slogged out and started walking toward our car again. It was then that I had a horrible thought. What if they had found our car? What if they were waiting there? I talked it over with her, and we decided to find a good hiding spot in the muddy undergrowth and literally wait the entire night. We had heard a gunshot. This was serious. Neither of our cell phones had reception. There was no choice. The hours passed, and the longer we felt safe, the sillier we started to think ourselves. There had to have been another explanation, right? Even if there was something horrible going on in the woods, the truck's occupants couldn't have found our car. Or even if they did, they wouldn't wait so long, would they? After 2 hours, we almost talked ourselves out of our cold, horrid hiding place until I heard a slight sound like shifting gravel. I peered intensely at the road. It was the same truck, lights off, engine off, rolling ever so slowly along in the night, waiting, looking, and listening for the fools that almost gave themselves up. It was noon the next day before we felt safe enough to leave our hiding spot and begin the confused and terrified walk back to civilization. It started on that night when the worst storm hit our small town. We all sat in the cozy booth of our local burger joint. The enticing aroma of sizzling patties and the lively chatter of customers filled the air. The walls were adorned with vintage posters, and the flickering neon sign above the counter cast a warm glow on the checkered floors. I adjusted my leather jacket, proud to represent my college football team, and glanced at the others at the table, Christina and Peter. Christina, with her captivating brown eyes and flowing brown hair, sat across from me, her smile illuminating the dimly lit space. Peter, a hefty but jovial guy with blonde hair and a mischievous glint in his brown eyes, squeezed into the seat next to me. "So, Jamal, tell us again about this moonstone spirit," Peter prodded, his mouth watering as he glanced at the menu. Peter did not grow up in this town, though his mother was related to an old family that had been here for generations. I chuckled, taking a sip of my soda before launching into the tale. Well, legend has it that a spirit haunts the Moonstone Cemetery. They say she's been lingering there for centuries, watching over the graves and punishing those who defile them. Christina leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Oh, spooky. She had grown up here, though her family was on the other side of our town and had gone out very little in her early life, preferring the libraries and studies. I shrugged, a smirk playing on my lips. People claim they've seen strange lights and heard eerie whispers in the dead of night. Some even say she has the power to make objects move on their own. It's all part of the mystery, I guess. Peter's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. Come on, man. You don't believe in that stuff, do you? I shrugged again, my eyes glancing towards the direction of the cemetery in the distance, knowing it would be shrouded in an eerie ambience right now. I don't know. There's something about the place that gives me chills. I've been there a few times. It's an ancient burial ground, covered in Spanish moss and mausoleums. It feels like stepping into another world every time. Christina leaned closer, her voice tinged with excitement. Maybe we should go check it out ourselves, just for fun. See if the spirit is as haunting as they say. My heart skipped a beat at her suggestion, my crush on her intensifying. That sounds doable. What do you say, Peter? Count me in. Let's go on a ghost hunt, guys. Pointing at the damaged graves. Someone's been causing trouble here. Christina's eyes widened, a flicker of concern crossing her face. That's terrible. Who would do such a thing? Peter shrugged, feigning nonchalance. Probably just some kids messing around. But let's keep an eye out. We don't want to stumble upon something we shouldn't. If this ghost does exist and wants to protect the graves here, I can understand why she'd be pissed at us. I commented, irritated that someone would damage the last resting place of someone's dear friend or relative. You know she's called Astrid. Christina broke into my thoughts as the first tremble of distant thunder sounded through the air. I looked back at her with a tilt of my head. The Moonstone spirit. You all keep calling her that. She's got a name. Astrid. How do you know? I may have led you on how little I knew about this place. Christina giggled as I took her hand when her feet entangled with some loose branches that had fallen to the ground. Astrid, Moonstone spirit. Who cares? Peter continued, his clumsy feet tripping over a long smothered candle on a graveside. Geez, man, watch where you're going, I said, quickly leaning down to try and fix the broken plastic that once held the pale thing in place. As we continued forward, the thunder above became louder, and the trees moaned from the wind beginning to move them. Our flashlights cut through the inky darkness, guiding our path as we walked among the weathered tombstones. The air grew heavy with a sense of age and history, and I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching our every move. It had to be the pressure shift from the storm. Hey, guys, check out that mausoleum, Peter exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. It looks ancient. I squinted through the gloom, and there, nestled in the oldest section of the cemetery, stood a towering mausoleum adorned with intricate carvings. My gaze shifted to the flickering candles, casting dancing shadows on the aged stone. There were lit candles here? I glanced to Christina, who seemed to have noticed the same thing. Who could have lit those candles? Christina asked, her voice quivering slightly. Peter grinned mischievously. Maybe the Moonstone spirit likes to have some candlelight ambience. Torn between Peter's adventurous spirit and Christina's growing unease, I slowed my walk. My flashlight aimed at the structure ahead. The flames seemed to beckon, their mesmerizing dance drawing me closer, despite the warning bells ringing in the back of my mind. I don't know, guys, I interjected, my voice laced with uncertainty. Maybe we should turn back. Peter scoffed, dismissing my concerns. Come on, Jamal, don't be a scaredy cat. We're here to experience something thrilling, remember? I think I've had my fill of thrilling, I responded through the newest peal of thunder that stole the sound of my words. Christina's brows furrowed, her voice filled with genuine worry. No, Jamal's right. This doesn't feel right. A pang of indecision rooted me to the spot I stood, Christina moving a bit closer to me. Peter's flashlight danced along the mausoleum as he looked for the entrance in, his electrical flashlight mingling with the yellow of the candles. I had made my decision. This was no longer fun. Okay, guys, I finally spoke up, my voice resolute. More to convince Peter than anything. Let's respect the mausoleum and its occupants. We've had our adventure for tonight. It's time to go back. Peter's stubbornness clung to him like an unwavering shadow. As we approached the exit, his voice grew adamant, his gaze locked on the ancient mausoleum. Come on, guys, just a quick look. What if Astrid's body is still in there? Peter insisted, his curiosity getting the best of him. Christina took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. We shouldn't disturb the resting place of the dead. This isn't a good idea, dude, I offered. Christina pulled my arm. I glanced at her and she was gesturing towards my friend who seemed hell-bent to get in. Fine, I'll go alone. You two can wait outside. So, we huddled together outside the old building, our breaths visible in the chilly night air. Anxiety hung heavy in the silence as we strained to catch any sign of Peter's return. Christina's fingers tapped nervously against her arm, mirroring the cadence of my own racing heart. The moon cast an ethereal glow on our anxious faces, highlighting the concern etched in our eyes. Time seemed to stretch, elongating the moments as we shared a wordless understanding, united in our shared worry. Every rustle of leaves and distant sounds sent a jolt of anticipation through us, each passing second intensifying the weight of the unknown. We were suspended in a liminal space, caught between hope and fear, desperately awaiting Peter's appearance. Jamal, Christina started, but I already knew what she was going to say. I'll go. You stay right here. I'm not going anywhere, she said with a forced chuckle. I cautiously stepped into the mausoleum, a chill crawled up my spine, the air inside carrying a peculiar, almost otherworldly scent. The ancient structure loomed above me, its architecture intricate and foreboding. The walls seemed to whisper secrets of something long forgotten, while no light filtered through stained glass windows. Shadows danced in eerie patterns from my flashlight, swirling around the stone pillars that supported the weight of centuries. Symbols, etched into the walls, seemed to pulse with an invisible, inexplicable energy that I almost thought I could see. The atmosphere was heavy, as if time itself held its breath within this arcane space. It was a place that defied the laws of the mundane, hinting at a realm beyond the mortal realm, a realm where the boundaries between life and death blurred into an enigmatic dance. "Peter," I called out, my voice echoing through the chamber. Silence greeted me in return. I pressed forward as there was no way I was going to go back empty-handed. The flickering beam ahead beckoned, drawing me closer, until finally, I found myself standing at the threshold of the central crypt itself. With a deep breath, I stepped inside, ready to uncover the fate that had befallen my friend. The flickering candlelight within revealed a scene of unimaginable horror, etching an indelible image into my mind. My heart sank, constricted by a vice-like grip of fear and revulsion. Peter's lifeless body lay sprawled on the cold stone floor, his eyes wide open in a permanent expression of terror. His flesh was marred, disfigured, as if something unholy had ravaged him. A dark, foreboding presence loomed over him. The ghostly figure had to be Astrid, or what remained of her. Her once ethereal beauty had given way to a grotesque visage of decay. Tattered remnants of a flowing white gown clung to her emaciated frame, as if they were mocking the specter of her former self. Her eyes, hollow and vacant, glowed with an otherworldly light, devoid of any trace of humanity. As Astrid turned her gaze towards me, a wicked grin stretched across her gaunt features, revealing rows of jagged, yellow teeth. Her spectral form seemed to flicker and distort, as if her existence teetered on the fringes of reality. In her hands, she held a crimson-stained knife, a macabre testament to the horror she had unleashed. A guttural, chilling laughter emanated from the phantom, echoing through the chamber with an unsettling resonance. It seemed to carry the weight of centuries of pain and malice. My legs trembled, threatening to give way beneath me as terror gripped me. Yet, even in the face of this nightmarish tableau, an unyielding determination swelled within me. With gritted teeth and a resolve forged in the crucible of fear, I steeled myself. I do not know what possessed me to do this, but I did. I cautiously stepped into the mausoleum, a chill crawled up my spine, the air inside carrying a peculiar, almost otherworldly scent. The ancient structure loomed above me, its architecture intricate and foreboding. The walls seemed to whisper secrets of something long forgotten, while no light filtered through stained glass windows. Shadows danced in eerie patterns from my flashlight, swirling around the stone pillars that supported the weight of centuries. Symbols, etched into the walls, seemed to pulse with an invisible, inexplicable energy that I almost thought I could see. The atmosphere was heavy, as if time itself held its breath within this arcane space. It was a place that defied the laws of the mundane, hinting at a realm beyond the mortal realm, a realm where the boundaries between life and death blurred into an enigmatic dance. "Peter," I called out, my voice echoing through the chamber. Silence greeted me in return. I pressed forward as there was no way I was going to go back empty-handed. The flickering beam ahead beckoned, drawing me closer, until finally, I found myself standing at the threshold of the central crypt itself. With a deep breath, I stepped inside, ready to uncover the fate that had befallen my friend. The flickering candlelight within revealed a scene of unimaginable horror, etching an indelible image into my mind. My heart sank, constricted by a vice-like grip of fear and revulsion. Peter's lifeless body lay sprawled on the cold stone floor, his eyes wide open in a permanent expression of terror. His flesh was marred, disfigured, as if something unholy had ravaged him. A dark, foreboding presence loomed over him. The ghostly figure had to be Astrid, or what remained of her. Her once ethereal beauty had given way to a grotesque visage of decay. Tattered remnants of a flowing white gown clung to her emaciated frame, as if they were mocking the specter of her former self. Her eyes, hollow and vacant, glowed with an otherworldly light, devoid of any trace of humanity. As Astrid turned her gaze towards me, a wicked grin stretched across her gaunt features, revealing rows of jagged, yellow teeth. Her spectral form seemed to flicker and distort, as if her existence teetered on the fringes of reality. In her hands, she held a crimson-stained knife, a macabre testament to the horror she had unleashed. A guttural, chilling laughter emanated from the phantom, echoing through the chamber with an unsettling resonance. It seemed to carry the weight of centuries of pain and malice. My legs trembled, threatening to give way beneath me as terror gripped me. Yet, even in the face of this nightmarish tableau, an unyielding determination swelled within me. With gritted teeth and a resolve forged in the crucible of fear, I steeled myself. I do not know what possessed me to do this, but I did. I approached the scene, my heart pounding in my chest, determined to free Peter from this thing. The haunting laughter of Astrid filled the air, an unsettling symphony that accompanied my every step. As I drew closer, the room seemed to warp and contort, the walls pulsating with an ominous energy. The stench of decay permeated the air, suffocating me with its sickening sweetness. Gripping the flashlight tighter, I raised it high, the beam of light piercing through the darkness, aimed directly at the spectral form. "Release him," I commanded, my voice quivering with a mix of fear and determination. "Let him go." Astrid's laughter turned into a haunting hiss, her eyes narrowing with a malevolent glare. Her hideous mouth moved as black slime dripped from its lips. It was speaking, and it took me too long to understand what it had said. "Desecrator." The shriek destroyed whatever I had to face this thing, and I sprinted back the way I came. Behind me, the malevolent presence of Astrid surged forth with an unholy speed, her ethereal form flickering and contorting in the darkness, her shrieks following me. As I burst out of the mausoleum of Astrid, I screamed at Christina to start running. She didn't even hesitate, though her eyes grew wide as she began to run. She must have seen what was behind me. Moonlight filtered through the gnarled branches overhead, casting elongated shadows that danced before us, threatening to swallow us whole as we sprinted back the way we came. The atmosphere itself seemed to conspire against our escape as the rain began to pour down on us, turning the ground around our feet into mud. We darted through the labyrinthine paths of the cemetery, the sound echoing in our ears like a relentless drumbeat of fear. Headstones and crypts blurred into a nightmarish landscape, each step taken in blind desperation. Branches snagged at our clothing, as if the very trees sought to ensure our capture, to keep us trapped for Astrid to have her way. We stumbled and tripped, the uneven ground threatening to claim us as our pursuer drew closer, her presence at our heels. Fear clawed at my throat, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I spied the glint of wrought iron from a flash of lightning. "That way!" I screamed. I turned to look over my shoulder to see where Christina was. She had frozen in her tracks, a look of horror and despair on her face as the spectral figure materialized from the darkness right beside her. The Moonstone spirit lunged at my crush with supernatural speed, her skeletal fingers snaking through the air like the tendrils of a predator. With a malevolent cackle, she seized Christina by the hair as the poor girl screamed. That scream was cut off when she was yanked backwards with a force that snapped her head back with a cracking sound. The young girl's motionless body was dragged mercilessly towards the dense forest, her fingers dragging useless in the dirt. I lunged forward, but I could not reach her in time. She and the spirit vanished into the black shadows of the trees. I don't know how, but I dragged myself back to the entrance of the cemetery and my car itself. A few times I thought I heard my friend's pitiful wail laugh between the peals of thunder, but I knew that it could not be the case. It was that night the storm hit, destroying the power grid and flooding a quarter of the city. I, myself, had barely made it away from that place to one of the shelters. It was a week before Peter's car was found destroyed at the old cemetery. Though their bodies were never found, the police chalked up their disappearances to drowning in the flood. There were just 2 names of 12 that had died that night. I knew the truth though, and it haunts me to this day. Sometimes when I look out my window or driving at night, I think I see that spirit standing there with another spirit hiding behind her. My therapist says it's the guilt of losing friends in a traumatic flood, but I think that's Christina accusing me of not saving her and Astrid daring me to try again. One day, I might